You should have told us you were selling this place. We would have helped you pack." Those words still echoed in my mind as I stood frozen in my own driveway, watching my mother direct my sister toward the front door of my beach house like she owned the place. My neighbor Gloria had called me 20 minutes earlier, her voice tight with confusion. "Ivy, honey, there's a moving truck in front of your house. Your mama's here with your sister and those kids. They're carrying boxes inside." I thought she was mistaken. I thought maybe they were dropping something off, visiting for the day, anything but what I was now witnessing with my own eyes. My name is Ivy, and I am 31 years old. I work as a project manager for Thornbright Ventures, a commercial real estate development company in Charleston, South Carolina. 3 years ago, I saved every penny I had, took out a mortgage I could barely afford, and bought this small beach house on Folly Beach. It was nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that barely fit 2 people, and a porch that faced the ocean. But it was mine. Every single inch of it was mine. "Careful with that one, Brooke. That's got my good dishes in it," my mother called out, gesturing toward a box my sister was struggling to carry up the porch steps. My sister Brooke was 34 years old and had never worked a day in her life. She had 2 children, a 7-year-old boy named Jaden and a 5-year-old girl named Maisie, from 2 different fathers who had long since disappeared from the picture. For as long as I could remember, Brooke had lived with our parents, letting them raise her kids while she complained about how hard her life was. I pulled my car into the driveway and stepped out, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. My mother spotted me immediately and waved like this was the most normal thing in the world. "There she is. Ivy, good, you're home early. Come help us with these boxes. There's still a whole truck to unload." I walked toward them slowly, my legs feeling like they were made of concrete. "Mom, what is going on here?" "What does it look like? We're moving in." She said it so casually, so matter-of-factly, that for a moment I wondered if I had missed something. Had there been a conversation I forgot? Had I somehow agreed to this in my sleep? Moving in. Into my house. Brooke dropped the box she was carrying onto the porch with a thud and wiped sweat from her forehead. "It's a family property, Ivy. Mom and Dad helped you with the down payment, remember? That makes it shared." I felt the blood drain from my face. Mom and Dad gave me $2,000 toward the down payment. I put down $40,000. I pay the mortgage every single month. I pay the insurance. I pay the property taxes. This is my house. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Don't be dramatic. Family is family. Brooke needs a place to stay, and this house has been sitting here half empty while she and those babies are crammed into your father's den. It's not fair." "Not fair?" The words came out louder than I intended. "You decided to move into my house without even asking me, and I'm the one being unfair?" Jaden came running around the corner of the house, sand covering his shoes. "Mommy, can we go to the beach now? You said we could go to the beach when we got here." Brooke smiled at him, completely ignoring me. "In a little bit, baby. Let Mommy finish unpacking first." I stood there, watching this scene unfold like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare. My mother was already heading back to the moving truck. My sister was picking up another box. My niece and nephew were running around my yard like it belonged to them, and not one of them seemed to think there was anything wrong with what they were doing. "I need you all to stop," I said, my voice trembling. "Right now, stop." My mother turned around with an expression of pure annoyance. "Ivy, we don't have time for one of your tantrums. The truck has to be returned by 6, and we still have half of Brooke's things to unload. You can throw your little fit later." Little fit. That was what she called it whenever I tried to stand up for myself. Whenever I said no to lending money that was never repaid. Whenever I declined to babysit at the last minute. Whenever I refused to drop everything to solve problems that were not mine to solve. A little fit. I looked at the boxes stacked on my porch, at the toys already scattered across my lawn, at my sister's smug expression as she waited for me to back down like I always did. But something inside me had shifted. Something had finally broken. "I'm going inside," I said quietly. "And when I come back out, I expect all of this to be gone." My mother laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, honey, you'll get used to it. Family adjusts." I walked past them without another word, unlocked my front door, and stepped inside my house. My house. The walls I had painted myself. The furniture I had saved months to buy. The kitchen where I cooked meals for one because I had learned long ago that my family only showed up when they wanted something. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking as I searched for the number of a locksmith. Then I searched for the non-emergency line for the local police department. If my family wanted a war, I was finally ready to fight one. Growing up, I learned very quickly that in my family, there were two kinds of people: those who took and those who gave. Brooke was a taker. I was expected to give. My parents had always made excuses for her. When she dropped out of high school at 17 because she was pregnant with Jaden, they said she was too young to understand the consequences. When the father left 6 months later, and Brooke moved back home with the baby, they said she just needed support. When she got pregnant again 2 years later by a different man who also disappeared, they said life had been hard on her. When she refused to get a job because she claimed she needed to focus on being a mother, they said she was being responsible. Meanwhile, I put myself through college while working 2 jobs. I graduated with honors. I climbed my way up from an entry-level assistant position to project manager in less than 5 years. I saved every spare dollar I had, lived in apartments with roommates I barely tolerated, and sacrificed vacations and luxuries so that one day I could have something that was truly mine. And through all of that, my family treated me like a bank. Ivy, can you lend us a few hundred for Jaden's birthday party? We'll pay you back. They never did. Ivy, Brooke's car broke down. Can you help her out this one time? There were always more times. Ivy, your father's retirement isn't what we expected. Can you chip in for groceries this month? It was never just 1 month. When I bought the beach house, I thought I had finally created a space that was just for me. A sanctuary away from the constant demands, the guilt trips, the exhausting cycle of giving and never receiving anything in return. But I should have known better. The first sign of trouble came about 6 months ago, when Brooke started making comments during family dinners. Must be nice to have a beach house sitting empty while some of us are struggling. You know, the kids would love to spend more time at the beach. Too bad their aunt never invites them. I ignored the comments. I had learned that engaging with Brooke's passive-aggressive behavior only made things worse. But the comments got bolder, more pointed, and my mother started echoing them. It does seem a little selfish, Ivy. That house has 2 bedrooms, and you live there alone. Brooke and the kids are practically on top of each other in that den. Mom, they live in your house for free, I pointed out. Brooke has never paid rent. She's never paid for groceries. She's never paid for anything. She's a single mother. What do you expect her to do? Get a job, I said. Like I did. Like millions of other single mothers do. That conversation ended with my mother calling me cold and heartless, and Brooke refusing to speak to me for 2 weeks. At the time, I thought the drama would blow over like it always did. I was wrong. Standing in my living room now, watching through the window as my mother and sister continued to unload boxes onto my porch, I finally understood. They had never intended to ask my permission. They had never planned to have a conversation. They had simply decided that what was mine was theirs, and they expected me to accept it. I thought about all the times I had backed down, all the times I had written checks to keep the peace, all the times I had swallowed my anger and told myself that family was more important than boundaries. And I realized that every single time I had given in, I had taught them that my no meant nothing. The locksmith answered on the 3rd ring. I explained that I needed all the locks on my house changed immediately. He said he could come the following morning. Can you make it earlier? I asked. It's urgent. He said he would see what he could do. Next, I called the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. That family members were attempting to move into my property without permission. That I owned the house outright with a mortgage in my name only. And that I expected them to refuse to leave. The officer on the phone was professional and sympathetic. He took down my information and explained the options. If my family was inside the house when I asked them to leave and they refused, it could become complicated. But if I could get them out before they established any kind of residency, I would have much stronger legal standing. They think they're officially moving in this weekend, I said. Saturday, 3 days from now. Then I'd suggest making sure you're prepared before that happens. the officer said. I thanked him and hung up. Through the window, I watched my mother knock on my front door. I did not answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Ivy, open this door right now. We need to bring the boxes inside before it rains. I stayed silent. Ivy, I know you're in there. Stop being ridiculous. Brooke joined her at the door, her voice shrill with irritation. This is so typical of her. She always has to make everything about herself. I walked away from the window and sat down on my couch. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was clear. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. They wanted to treat my home like family property? Fine. Then they could learn what happened when they tried to take something that did not belong to them. I pulled out my phone and texted my neighbor Gloria. Thank you for calling me. I'm handling it. Please don't let them tell you anything about me. They don't speak for me. Her response came seconds later. I had a feeling something was off. You've always been so private about your space. Let me know if you need anything. I smiled despite everything. At least someone respected my boundaries. The next 3 days felt like preparing for battle. The locksmith came Wednesday morning, just as he promised. He was a quiet man in his 50s named Walter, and he worked efficiently while I hovered nearby, explaining the situation in vague terms. He did not ask too many questions, which I appreciated. By the time he left, every lock on my house, front door, back door, side door to the garage, had been replaced. I had 3 copies of each key, and I hid 2 sets in secure locations that only I knew about. On Thursday, I went to the county records office and obtained a certified copy of my deed. Then I went to my bank and got documentation showing that the mortgage was in my name alone, that every payment had come from my account, and that no other names were associated with the property. I also pulled up my homeowner's insurance policy, which listed me as the sole owner and occupant. That evening, my phone rang constantly. My mother, my father, Brooke. Even numbers I did not recognize, which I assumed were relatives who had been recruited to pressure me. I did not answer any of them. Instead, I sent a single text to my mother. Do not attempt to enter my property. If you do, I will call the police. Her response was immediate and explosive. How dare you threaten your own family? That house belongs to all of us. Your father and I helped you buy it. You would be nothing without us. I read the message 3 times, then set my phone down on the kitchen counter and walked away. Friday morning, I called in sick to work. It was the first time I had taken a sick day in over 2 years, but I needed to be home. I needed to be ready. Around noon, my father's truck pulled into my driveway. He got out slowly, his face a mixture of confusion and frustration. I watched from the window as he walked up to my front door and tried his key. It did not work. He tried again, then jiggled the handle, then stepped back and stared at the lock like it had personally insulted him. He knocked. Ivy, open up. It's Dad. I did not move. Ivy, come on. Your mother is upset. Brooke is upset. The kids are upset. Can we just talk about this like adults? I stayed silent. He sighed heavily and pulled out his phone. A moment later, my phone buzzed with a text from him. I'm outside. Let me in. I typed back. The locks have been changed. You are not welcome on my property without my permission. There was a long pause. Then his truck engine started, and he pulled out of the driveway. I knew this was not over. I knew Saturday would be the real test. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed listening to the sound of the waves outside my window, trying to find comfort in the rhythm that had once brought me so much peace. But my mind kept racing through worst-case scenarios. What if they broke a window? What if they claimed I had invited them? What if the police took their side? I got up at 5 Saturday morning, showered, dressed, and ate a small breakfast I did not taste. Then I sat on my couch with my stack of documents beside me and waited. They arrived at 9:30. The moving truck pulled up first, the same one from Wednesday. Behind it came my mother's sedan, and behind that came my father's truck. Brooke climbed out of the passenger side of my mother's car, and the kids tumbled out of the back seat, already excited about the beach they could see from the driveway. My mother marched toward the front door with the confidence of someone who believed she had every right to be there. She reached for the handle, found it locked, then tried her key. When it did not work, she tried it again. Then she pounded on the door. "Ivy, open this door right now. We have a truck full of furniture and no time for your games." I did not answer. Instead, I picked up my phone and dialed the number I had saved 3 days earlier. "Charleston County Police Department. How may I direct your call?" "I need to report trespassing," I said, my voice calm. "There are people attempting to break into my home." My mother was still pounding on the door. "Ivy, I know you can hear me. This is ridiculous. You are going to ruin everything." I gave the dispatcher my address and explained the situation. She said officers would be there within 15 minutes. Outside, Brooke had joined my mother at the door. "Maybe there's another way in. Check the back." I watched through the living room window as Brooke disappeared around the side of the house. A moment later, I heard her try the back door, then the side door to the garage. All locked. "They're all locked!" she shouted. "She changed all the locks." My father was standing by his truck, his arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. The kids were running around the front yard, oblivious to the drama unfolding around them. 10 minutes later, I heard the sirens. 2 police cruisers pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing. The officers stepped out and approached my family with calm authority. "We received a report of trespassing," one of them said. "Does anyone live at this address?" My mother immediately pointed at the front door. "My daughter lives here. Our daughter. This is family property. She's being completely unreasonable and won't let us inside." "Ma'am, do you have any documentation proving ownership of this property?" My mother sputtered. "Documentation? I'm her mother. We helped her buy this house. Tell them, Harold." My father cleared his throat. "We gave her $2,000 for the down payment. We're family." The officer turned toward the house. "Is the owner present?" I took a deep breath, gathered my documents, and opened the front door. "I'm the owner," I said, stepping onto the porch. "I have the deed, the mortgage paperwork, and my insurance policy. This house is in my name only. These people do not have permission to be here." I handed the documents to the officer, who reviewed them carefully, while my mother's face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. "She's lying!" Brooke screamed. "This is our family's house. She can't just kick us out." "Ma'am, I need you to calm down," the second officer said, stepping between Brooke and the porch. "The documentation is clear," the first officer said, handing my papers back to me. "This property belongs to Miss Ivy. You do not have legal standing to be here without her permission." My mother's voice cracked. "But we're her family. She can't do this to us." "She can," the officer said firmly. "And she has. I'm going to need you all to leave the premises immediately. If you return without the owner's consent, you will be subject to arrest for trespassing." Brooke was crying now, loud, dramatic sobs that had always worked on my parents, but did nothing for the officers. "Where are we supposed to go? I have children. She's throwing children out onto the street." "Brooke, you live with Mom and Dad," I said quietly. "You have a home. It's just not this one." The look she gave me was pure venom. "You're going to regret this, Ivy. You're going to regret every single thing you've done today." I watched as the officers escorted my family back to their vehicles. I watched as the moving truck pulled away with all of Brooke's boxes still inside. I watched as my mother glared at me through her car window, her mouth forming words I could not hear but could easily imagine. And then, they were gone. I stood on my porch, my documents still clutched in my hands, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The officers checked in with me one more time, confirmed that I wanted to file a formal trespassing notice, and promised to patrol the area for the rest of the day. When they left, I was alone. I walked back inside my house, closed the door, and sank onto my couch. My hands were shaking. My eyes were burning with tears I refused to let fall. But underneath all of that, for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten. I felt free. The silence after they left was almost more unsettling than the chaos had been. I sat on my couch for what felt like hours, staring at the front door as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. My phone was face down on the coffee table, vibrating constantly with calls and messages I refused to look at. Every few minutes, I would hear a car pass by on the street, and my entire body would tense, convinced they had come back. But they did not come back. Not that day. Around noon, my stomach reminded me that I had barely eaten anything since the previous night. I forced myself to make a sandwich, though I could not taste it. I drank a glass of water. I tried to read a book, but the words blurred together on the page. Finally, around 3 in the afternoon, I gave in and looked at my phone. 47 missed calls, 23 text messages, 6 voicemails. The texts ranged from furious to pleading to threatening. My mother accused me of destroying the family. Brooke called me every name she could think of. My father sent a single message that simply said, "This is not how we raised you." I read each message carefully, not because I wanted to engage with them, but because I wanted to understand. I wanted to know if there was any part of them that recognized how wrong they had been. Any acknowledgement that showing up to move into someone's home without permission was not normal behavior. Any hint of self-awareness. There was none. Instead, every message painted me as the villain. I was selfish. I was cruel. I was a bad daughter, a bad sister, a bad aunt. I was single because no man would want someone so cold. I would die alone in my precious beach house and deserve every moment of it. I deleted every message without responding. The voicemails were harder to ignore. My mother's voice, trembling with what sounded like genuine emotion, asking how I could do this to her. Brooke sobbing that her children were traumatized, that they had been so excited about living at the beach, and now they would never trust family again. My father, stern and disappointed, saying that he never expected his own daughter to call the police on her flesh and blood. I listened to each one, then deleted them too. That evening, I took a long walk on the beach. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that usually filled me with peace. But tonight, all I could feel was a heavy knot of anxiety in my chest. I knew this was not over. I knew my family would not accept defeat this easily. They had spent 31 years believing they were entitled to whatever I had, and one encounter with police officers was not going to change that overnight. I was right. Sunday morning, I woke to the sound of knocking. Not pounding, like my mother's frantic attempts from the day before, but a slow, deliberate knock that somehow felt more ominous. I approached the door cautiously and looked through the peephole. My Aunt Frances stood on the porch, her arms crossed, her expression grim. Frances was my mother's older sister, and she had always positioned herself as the family mediator. Whenever there was conflict, she inserted herself into the middle of it, claiming she wanted to help everyone find common ground. In reality, she almost always sided with whoever was causing the problem, believing that the path of least resistance was for the reasonable person to simply give in. I did not open the door. "Ivy," Frances called through the wood. "I know you're in there. Your mother called me. She's beside herself with worry. Can we please just talk?" I stayed silent. "I'm not here to yell at you or take sides. I just want to understand what happened. Your mother says you called the police on your own family. That can't be the whole story." I took a breath and spoke through the door. "The whole story is that my mother and sister tried to move into my house without my permission. They showed up with a moving truck and started unloading boxes. When I told them to leave, they refused. So I called the police. That's the whole story." There was a pause. "But Ivy, surely you could have handled it differently. They're family. Your mother says she helped you buy this house. She gave me $2,000 3 years ago. I've paid over $100,000 in mortgage, taxes, and maintenance since then. This is my house. My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. No one else's." Another pause. "I understand that, but couldn't you at least let Brooke and the kids stay for a little while? Just until she gets back on her feet?" I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "Brooke has been getting back on her feet for 7 years, Frances. She has never had a job. She has never paid rent. She has lived with my parents her entire adult life while I worked and saved and struggled to build something for myself. And now she wants to take that too." "No. The answer is no." Frances sighed heavily. "You're being very stubborn, Ivy. And you're enabling people who think they can take whatever they want from me. Please leave my property." She stood there for another moment, then turned and walked back to her car. I watched through the window as she pulled away, probably already composing the report she would deliver to my mother about how unreasonable I was being. The calls and messages continued throughout the day. By Monday morning, I had blocked every family member's number. It was the only way I could function. When I returned to work Tuesday, my coworker Denise noticed immediately that something was wrong. "You look exhausted," she said, setting a cup of coffee on my desk. "Rough weekend?" I considered brushing off the question, but something about Denise's genuine concern made me want to talk. My family tried to move into my beach house without asking. I had to call the police to get them to leave. Her eyes widened. "Wait, seriously? They just showed up and started moving in? With a truck, and boxes, and my sister's 2 kids." Denise shook her head slowly. "That's insane. What did they think was going to happen? They thought I would roll over like I always do." I took a sip of the coffee she had brought, but I didn't. "Good for you," she said firmly. "Boundaries are hard, especially with family. But you did the right thing." I wished I could believe her completely. Part of me still felt guilty, still heard my mother's voice calling me selfish and cold. But another part of me, the part that had finally fought back, knew that I could not keep living as someone else's doormat. The question was whether I was strong enough to keep that resolve when the real pressure began. The real pressure began on Wednesday. I was at work, focused on a presentation I had to deliver the following week, when my desk phone rang. The caller identification showed an unfamiliar number, but it was local, so I answered. "Miss Ivy?" a woman's voice asked. "This is Officer Patricia with Charleston County Child Protective Services. Do you have a moment to speak?" My blood ran cold. Child Protective Services? "Yes, ma'am. We received a report yesterday regarding 2 minor children, Jaden and Maisie, whose aunt allegedly endangered their welfare by forcing them into homelessness. I need to ask you a few questions about the incident." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. There was no incident, and no one was made homeless. "Can you explain what happened on Saturday, November 2nd? I took a deep breath and recounted the events as calmly as I could. My family showing up uninvited, the attempted move-in, my refusal to allow it, the police intervention, the fact that Brooke and her children had never lived at my address and had their own residence with my parents. The officer listened without interruption, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Miss Ivy, based on what you're telling me, it sounds like the children have a stable home with your parents. Is that correct?" "Yes. My sister and her children have lived with my parents for 7 years. They have never lived with me." "And you own the property at the address in question?" "Yes. I have the deed and mortgage documentation." Another pause. "I see. Well, this appears to be a family dispute rather than a child welfare issue. I'll note that in the file. However, I do want to advise you that if further reports are made, we may need to conduct a more thorough investigation." "Further reports? Are you saying my family might keep calling you to harass me?" The officer's tone softened slightly. "I can't speculate on anyone's intentions, but I can tell you that false reports to Child Protective Services are taken seriously. If a pattern of unfounded claims emerges, there can be consequences for the reporting party." I thanked her and hung up, my hands shaking. Brooke had called Child Protective Services. She had tried to use her own children as weapons against me, claiming I had endangered them by refusing to let strangers move into my home. The depths of her manipulation left me breathless. I spent the rest of the workday in a fog, barely able to concentrate. When I got home that evening, I sat on my porch watching the waves and trying to process what my family had become. Or maybe, what they had always been. Thursday brought more drama. My father showed up at my door, alone this time, looking older and more tired than I had ever seen him. "Can we talk?" he asked through the closed door. "Just you and me. No one else." Against my better judgment, I opened the door, but did not invite him inside. We stood on the porch, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt between us. "Your mother is devastated," he began. "She hasn't stopped crying since Saturday." "I'm sorry she's upset, but what she did was wrong, Dad. You know that." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I know it wasn't handled well. But Ivy, you have to understand. Brooke is struggling. Those kids need stability. When your mother suggested they move here, it seemed like a solution. A solution for who? Not for me. No one asked me. No one considered for even a second that I might have thoughts or feelings about people moving into my home. "We're family," he said, as if that explained everything. "Family takes care of each other." "I have been taking care of this family for years, Dad. I've given money. I've given time. I've given up opportunities because I was always expected to be available to help. And what have I gotten in return? More demands. More expectations. More guilt when I say no." He looked at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. "I know you've done a lot. But Brooke is 34 years old. She's had 7 years to figure out her life, and she's done nothing except sit in your den and wait for someone else to solve her problems. I am not going to be that someone anymore." My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that cut deeper than anything my mother or sister had thrown at me. "You know, your grandmother left you that money for the down payment because she believed in you. She thought you were the one who would make something of yourself. But she also believed in family. She would be heartbroken to see what you've become." I felt the words like a physical blow. My grandmother had died 4 years ago, and she had indeed left me a small inheritance that I had used toward the beach house. Using her memory against me was a new low, even for my father. "Get off my property," I said quietly. "Now." He stared at me for a moment, something like regret flickering across his face. Then he turned and walked back to his truck. I went inside, locked the door, and finally let myself cry. But even through the tears, something had hardened inside me. My father's manipulation attempt had backfired. Instead of making me feel guilty, it had confirmed what I was beginning to understand. This family did not see me as a person. They saw me as a resource, and resources apparently did not have feelings. The following week brought an unexpected development. I was having lunch with Denise in the break room when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. The message was brief. "This is Gloria from next door. Someone just tried to get into your house through the back. I called police. You should come home." I showed the message to Denise, grabbed my purse, and was out the door within 30 seconds. The drive to Folly Beach normally took about 25 minutes. I made it in 18, my heart pounding the entire way. When I pulled into my driveway, a police cruiser was already parked in front of the house. Gloria was standing on her porch, watching anxiously. I approached the officers, who were making notes near my back door. What happened? One of the officers recognized me from the previous Saturday. "Miss Ivy, your neighbor called to report someone attempting to enter through the rear of the property. When we arrived, we found this." He pointed to my back door. The frame was damaged, with clear pry marks around the lock. Someone had tried to force it open. "Did you see who did it?" I asked Gloria. She shook her head. "I heard the noise and looked out my window. I saw a woman running toward the street. She had dark hair, but I couldn't see her face. By the time I got outside, she was gone." Dark hair. My sister had dark hair. "We'll increase patrols in the area," the officer said. "And I'd recommend installing security cameras. If this happens again and we have footage, we'll have grounds for arrest." I thanked them and went inside to assess the damage. The lock was intact, but the frame would need to be repaired. More importantly, my sense of safety had been shattered. My own sister had apparently tried to break into my home. I called a security company that afternoon. By the next morning, I had cameras installed at every entrance, motion sensor lights around the perimeter, and a new reinforced frame on the back door. Then I called the police department and requested to file an amendment to the trespassing notice I had already submitted. I provided the description Gloria had given and explained that I believed the intruder was my sister. The officer took down the information and promised to follow up. That evening, I received a call from my mother. I had blocked her regular number, but she was calling from someone else's phone. "You filed a police report against your sister?" she screamed the moment I answered. "Have you completely lost your mind?" "Someone tried to break into my house, Mom. Gloria saw a woman running away. Who else would it be? Brooke would never do something like that. She was with me all day. You're making up lies to destroy your own family." "Then she has nothing to worry about. The police will investigate, and if she's innocent, that will be clear." "You're a monster," my mother hissed. "A cold, heartless monster. I don't know how I raised someone like you." "Maybe you should ask yourself that question," I said. because I've been wondering the same thing. I hung up and blocked the new number too. Over the next few days, I learned from Gloria that a police officer had visited Brooke at my parents' house to question her about the attempted break-in. According to what Gloria heard from a friend who knew a neighbor of my parents, Brooke had denied everything and claimed she had been home all day. My father had backed up her alibi. My mother had reportedly threatened to sue the police department for harassment. Nothing came of the investigation. Without clear footage or physical evidence, there was not enough to press charges. But the message had been sent. My family knew I was not backing down, and I knew they were capable of more than I had imagined. The calls and messages from unknown numbers continued for another week before finally tapering off. My mother apparently recruited distant relatives, old family friends, and even a neighbor from my childhood to reach out and plead Brooke's case. Each message painted the same picture. I was being cruel. I was being selfish. I was destroying the family over a simple misunderstanding. I did not respond to any of them. Eventually, the silence I had been craving finally arrived. No more calls, no more messages, no more surprise visits. My family had apparently realized that their usual tactics were not working. But I knew this was not peace. This was a standoff. And standoffs eventually ended, one way or another. 3 weeks after the attempted break-in, I received a letter in the mail from an attorney's office. My mother was suing me for the return of the $2,000 she had given me toward the down payment, plus interest, claiming it was a loan that had never been repaid. I read the letter twice, then picked up my phone and called my own attorney. If my family wanted to fight this battle in court, I was ready. And this time, I would not be the one who lost. My attorney's name was Gregory, and he had been recommended by a colleague at work who had used him for a property dispute several years earlier. He was in his late 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that suggested he had seen every trick families could play on each other. "They're suing you for $2,000? He asked, reviewing my mother's letter during our first meeting. "That's not even worth the filing fees." "It's not about the money," I said. "It's about control. They want me to know they can make my life difficult." Gregory nodded slowly. "That tracks with what you've told me. The attempted move-in, the Child Protective Services call, the break-in attempt. This lawsuit is just another pressure tactic. So what do I do?" He leaned back in his chair. "We respond, we counter, and we make it clear that any further harassment will have consequences." Over the next 2 weeks, Gregory helped me prepare a response to my mother's lawsuit. We gathered documentation showing that the $2,000 had been a gift, not a loan. We pulled up text messages from when the money was given, in which my mother had explicitly said it was a little something to help with your dream home. We obtained bank records showing that no repayment had ever been requested or expected. Gregory also helped me draft a counter-demand. In exchange for dropping the lawsuit, my family would agree to a formal no-contact order. Any violation would result in immediate legal action, including civil penalties. "They won't like this," Gregory warned. "I don't care what they like anymore." The response was filed on a Tuesday. By Friday, I received a call from Gregory. "They're dropping the lawsuit," he said, "but they refused the no-contact terms. Your mother's attorney said, and I quote, 'This family dispute should be handled within the family, not through courts.'" I laughed bitterly. They've been perfectly happy using the courts against me. But sure, suddenly they want to handle things privately. I expected as much. Here's what I recommend. We file our own civil complaint for harassment. The attempted move-in, the Child Protective Services report, the break-in, the lawsuit. It creates a pattern. We can seek a restraining order. Would that actually work? Given the documentation we have, I believe so. It would prohibit any member of your family from contacting you, visiting your property, or making false reports about you to any agency. I thought about it for a long moment. A restraining order against my own family. The finality of it felt immense. But so did the relief. "Do it," I said. The restraining order process took about 6 weeks. There was a hearing, during which my mother, my father, and Brooke were all required to appear. I sat on one side of the courtroom with Gregory. They sat on the other side with their attorney, a harried-looking man who seemed to realize his client's position was weak. My mother tried to speak during the hearing, claiming that this was all a misunderstanding, that they had only wanted to help me, that I was the one being vindictive. The judge listened patiently, then reviewed the evidence, the police reports, the documentation, the text messages, the Child Protective Services records. When the judge issued the restraining order, prohibiting all three of them from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my property, my mother burst into tears. My father looked stunned, like he could not believe this was happening. Brooke sat in silence, her face unreadable. I walked out of the courthouse without looking back. The weeks following the restraining order were the quietest of my life. For the first time in years, I did not wake up dreading what new demand or crisis would arrive from my family. My phone no longer buzzed with guilt-laden messages. No one showed up unannounced at my door. The constant noise in my head, the voice that always wondered if I was being too selfish, too cold, too ungrateful, finally began to quiet. I spent more time on the beach. I took up morning runs along the shoreline, letting the rhythm of my feet on the sand replace the rhythm of my family's expectations. I invited Denise down for a weekend, and we sat on my porch drinking wine and talking about everything except family drama. "You seem different," Denise said during that visit. "Lighter." I feel lighter. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there until I put it down. "You did the right thing, you know. I know it doesn't always feel like it, but you did." I nodded, watching the waves crash against the shore. I keep waiting for the guilt to hit, but it hasn't. And I'm starting to think that's because the guilt was never really mine to carry. It was something they put on me to keep me in line. Around the 3-month mark after the restraining order, I learned through Gloria that my family had fallen into chaos without me. My father had apparently taken early retirement, citing stress. My mother had stopped attending her regular social activities because she was too embarrassed by the rumors about what Ivy did to the family. And Brooke, according to Gloria's extensive network of neighborhood gossip, had finally been told by my parents that she needed to find her own place to live. "They gave her 6 months," Gloria reported over coffee one morning. "Apparently your father put his foot down, said he's too old to be raising grandchildren." I felt a strange mix of emotions at this news. Satisfaction, certainly, that my parents were finally holding Brooke accountable, but also a twinge of sadness for my niece and nephew, who were innocent in all of this. "What about the kids?" I asked. "They're fine, apparently. Brooke is looking at apartments nearby. Your mother is helping her with the deposit." Gloria paused. "You know, I think what you did might have actually been good for them. Not that they'd ever admit it." I considered that possibility. Maybe by refusing to be the safety net, I had forced my family to actually deal with their problems. Maybe Brooke would finally learn responsibility. Maybe my parents would finally set boundaries. Or maybe they would just find a new target for their expectations. I would probably never know, and I had made peace with that. What mattered was that I had finally found my own peace. I started working on the house projects I had always put off. I painted the guest bedroom a soft blue. I built a small deck extension off the back, where I could set up a lounge chair and watch the sunset. I planted a small garden on the side of the house, filling it with native plants that would attract butterflies. Each improvement felt like an act of reclamation. This was my space, my home, my life. And no one was going to take it from me again. Summer arrived with long days and warm breezes, and I celebrated my 32nd birthday with a small gathering on my porch. Denise came, along with a few other colleagues I had grown closer to over the past months. Gloria brought a homemade cake. We ate seafood and watched the sun sink into the ocean, and I realized I could not remember the last time I had felt this genuinely happy. That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone on my porch with a glass of wine and thought about everything that had happened. My family had tried to take what was mine. They had treated my hard work and sacrifice as communal property, had expected me to give and give until there was nothing left. And when I finally said no, they had attacked me in every way they could think of, emotionally, legally, even physically. But I had survived. More than survived. I had reclaimed my life. The restraining order remained in place. I had not spoken to my parents or my sister in nearly a year. Occasionally, I wondered if they thought about me, if they felt any regret. But mostly, I did not think about them at all. They had become background noise, echoes from a past I had finally escaped. I learned through Gloria that the following year brought consequences my family could not escape. My mother's lawsuit stunt had cost them their attorney fees, and word had spread through their social circle about the restraining order. Several longtime friends had quietly distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the public nature of the family conflict. My father's early retirement meant a reduced income, and the financial strain of supporting Brooke for so long had depleted their savings more than they had realized. Brooke eventually moved into a small apartment across town, but she struggled to hold down the various jobs she tried, cycling through retail positions and food service work that she complained were beneath her. Without my parents' constant financial support, which they could no longer afford, she faced the reality of actual responsibility for the first time. The children adjusted, as children do, but their grandmother could no longer spoil them with toys and treats the way she once had. The golden life they had all imagined taking over at my beach house had crumbled into something far more ordinary and far more difficult. I did not feel joy at their struggles, but I did not feel responsible for them either. They had made their choices, and consequences were simply the natural result of those choices. I had spent too many years trying to protect them from outcomes they had created themselves, and that era was over. On the 1-year anniversary of the day they had tried to move in, I took a long walk on the beach at sunset. The sky was painted in shades of gold and purple, and the waves whispered against the sand in their eternal rhythm. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, exhausted, overwhelmed, constantly giving pieces of herself away to people who never said thank you. That woman felt like a stranger now. I had built something here, not just a house, but a life on my own terms, with boundaries that protected my peace and space, that nurtured my soul. The path had been painful, but standing on the other side of it, I knew I would make the same choices again. Cleaning the sand off my porch that evening, I paused to watch the last light fade from the horizon. The house behind me was quiet and warm, filled with things I loved and memories I had chosen to create. Somewhere far away, my family was dealing with the consequences of treating me like I did not matter. But that was their story now, not mine. Mine was just beginning. Looking back on everything, the confrontations, the police sirens, the courtroom battles, and the long process of learning to put myself first, I realized that the hardest part of revenge was understanding it was never really about them at all. It was about finally believing I deserved to protect what was mine,